Hello, everyone. Maria here from Lit 5050. Today I'm here with Ian Clarke, who is, well, you will know Ian Clarke already, probably, but if not, he is the first whistleblower on race inclusion in finance and banking. That's one of the things he is. He's also a certified psychologist. He left a very successful career in investment banking behind, and he is a wonderful human being. And I'm not doing him justice, but well, that's him in a nutshell.
He's
Yeah.
nuts, in another words.
Could you introduce yourself?
It's a pleasure to be here with you, Maria. Thank you so much for inviting me on the show. I mean, you got it. It's how can you summarize a human being in a few sentences? But effectively, diversity inclusion is very important to me. You know, if you can probably tell, I'm half black and half white. I'm also gay, and I also have invisible disabilities. So I'm ticking off as many of the protected characteristics as we can get.
So, Ian, tell us a bit about your story. Tell us about your project Speak Up. What happened there? Okay, the change you made in your career in 2021, what happened there? Just tell us your story.
I'm not a banker anymore. I think that was probably the biggest surprise to me anyway. You know, if you asked me a year ago, you know, what I'd be doing in a year, I thought I would still be vice president of global sales at one of the world's largest banks. But it's funny, it's funny how things turn out. But I spent 15 years in banking across 2 continents. I always get asked, where's my dad? I'm older than I look, promise. But I 15 years across 2 continents, effectively running sector strategy, a sales strategy. I was training the sales team in transaction banking for HSBC, Europe's largest bank. And over those 15 years, I really did everything I could to put my heart and soul into changing firm for the better. You know, I set up the D&I committee. I helped set up the graduate communities committee. I was helping to run the Pride committee. I was a speaker for Balance, the women's committee. But nothing I did seemed to work, and I just constantly saw women, young people, black people being ejected from our firm through no reason other than that they were not old white heteronormative men, and that to me didn't sit well. So I wrote Project Speak Up, which is a 45-page report that really, I think, changed the whole perception of people and conduct risk. Certainly within the banking world, this report went viral and was reported on in press from 120 countries, 16 languages. It was on the news in Sydney. It was on the news in San Francisco, and I never was prepared for just how much people were passionate about what I was doing and supported me, which was beautiful. Unfortunately, the bank did not. So I found myself resigning in August to try and contextualize the report publicly and to try and compel my former line managers and leadership team at the bank to effect the change that was needed. It's been one hell of a year.
Wow. Okay. How are you feeling now?
There's definitely a catharsis which comes from trying to do something. There's you know, I think we're all about meaningful change, right? You and I. This is why we bonded so easily. And with the change that I was working on just wasn't meaningful. Project Speak Up was, and it's a shame that it cost my career, but the outcomes from that were significant. There's been a root and branch regulatory review. A number of white managing directors, mostly men, were dismissed or encouraged to leave the business. The bank sponsored 30 new black scholarships at Cambridge and has since announced that it is adopting the majority of my D&I strategy. And there are now 3 black people on the America's board of a European bank. The first time in history there has been not 1 but 3, and one of them is a woman. Fantastic progress, all delivered through Project Speak Up. So I'm immensely proud of what has happened and how people have listened to the voices that my report represented.
Yeah. Well, did you have some sort of aha moment, like an epiphany, when you decided, oh, this is not right for me, I need to to quit
I mean,
my job and do
I
something
was just
else?
doing
Or?
I was just doing my job. People often ask, no one asked you to write this report, but look, I had a view. Whistleblowers have a view of the world that is unusually broad, normally because we have many eggs in one basket, so to speak. So, as I did representing Balance, representing Pride, representing the entire bank in terms of the D&I committee, the Advancing Black Inclusion Committee,
Mhm.
the graduate community. I was going to events, I was being featured on magazines, I was being
Yeah.
quoted in newspapers, all this, really championing inclusion at my firm. But when I could see when it came down to it, it wasn't working. The aha moment was, I think, writing to the CEO, the chairman, and saying, look, please, can I present you my report and let's work on this together? And receiving no response time and
No
time
response,
again.
nothing.
No, the bank's senior leadership were by that point very clear that they did not want to engage what was effectively just an advisory paper, internal as it was. It was not me who leaked it, but it did leak after I delivered it to the bank CEO and 400 other executives. I had no choice. I had to find a way of making my voice heard. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, the leak meant that my position within the bank was ultimately untenable.
yeah. Um, okay, so what were the results in a nutshell? I mean, the results of that for people who have not read it yet, who have not had the chance.
Well, the report is phenomenally empowering. What really struck me after my resignation and my interview with Reuters was just how common the problems were, not just across the industry, but across the entire world, all different sectors. I had people from different banks, from different industries contacting me and saying, I recognize what you're talking about. This has happened to
Mm.
me, or it's happened to a friend of mine or a family member. The problems that Project Speak Up uncovers, the systems of oppression and the costs upon our businesses from not being inclusive, are unfortunately universal.
So, what is it in that leadership paradigm that makes it so difficult for minorities and for people who are don't fit that role to advance in their careers and get to leadership positions and stay there?
Yeah, I mean, this is the golden question, isn't it? Why is there these glass ceilings on people that aren't, particularly in banking, old white heteronormative men? In other industries, the glass ceilings are different. Perhaps in tech, you may actually being older is seen as a disadvantage. So
Mhm.
I think what we need to stop doing is saying who's best. Is it older people or younger people? Is it men or women? Is it black people or white people? Because let's take women for an example, right?
Yeah.
Lead 50-50. This is why we're here. There is an old trope that says that women aren't as strong as men, right? Men have a
Mm.
more upper body strength and therefore, on average, physically more capable. But that is just one nuance of the answer. Women are also phenomenally more strong than men. If you look at women develop earlier than men, they live longer than men. They're more durable than men. So I think we are oversimplifying things by saying that men are stronger than women. It is really the question we should be asking is, how could we possibly do without men and women? And the same is true whether we're talking about race or young people or old people. That is what diversity is all about. And I think that the boardrooms of this world need to wake up and
Yeah,
see that they cannot possibly answer all the questions themselves when they don't have people in that room that represent the full spectrum of diversity of the customers that we are ultimately
exactly.
here to service.
That's it. And the bottom line is better, right? It's just better for the business too when you have diverse leadership teams. I
Uh,
mean,
It's proven.
a workplace in which all genders can thrive and reach leadership positions and stay there and flourish there are workplaces that work for everyone, really. So
I
that's,
love what you said, all genders, because the binary decisions are for robots, right? We do not live in a world where we are robots, hopefully. We are free to make choices that are the full beauty of the diversity of the world we all share. So whether you are a man or a woman, or you're trans or you're non-binary, those are all genders that have different perspectives and different
yes,
ideas and different views. And if we unlock the potential of humanity, if we really embrace that diversity rather than punishing difference, I think that you would see massive competitive advantages come through in terms of marketability to oppressed communities, in terms of strategic optimization through different ideas and perspectives, and in terms of financial thriving through mitigation of the legal and regulatory risk that banks are now facing by not opening up their boardrooms to different types of people.
Yes. So if you had a piece of advice for CEOs out there in the banking world and from other industries, what would it be regarding everything we're talking about now?
I'd say the world is changing, and we need to change with it. The pace of change is not fast enough. You may think it's fast enough, but it is not. And if you cannot come along for this ride with us, then it will be a far rockier ride for you. And I don't mean that as a threat. I really do want banks and other firms to modernize with us, because the world around us is so divided today. And it would be such a beautiful message to embrace this willingly. The amount of benefits that come from embracing it willingly are phenomenal. Give us a chance and we will not let you down. We understand. And I'm speaking on behalf of women, disabled people, so I apologize, by the way, now for being a mouthpiece for all these oppressed groups, but I have some insight into those oppressed groups myself. And I think that we can really help the CEOs and the boards of the world start to think more broadly with our ideas and our contributions. Give us a chance.
Thank you. And if you could give a piece of advice to yourself, like I was going to say your younger self, but you're already young. So, so what would you tell it to yourself? Like as you started your career in banking, what would you like you had known?
It took me a long while to be comfortable with myself and to start being authentic. I wish I'd done that sooner, and I wish I had the confidence to do that sooner. But people really, they value authenticity. It builds trust, and it shows you can show that you're not perfect. And I've never claimed to be. And the more I wear my heart on my sleeve and show these many imperfections, and there are some wrinkles coming through, people warm to you. So I wish I'd been less of a robot in my early years and been more myself, for good and for bad. I think that is the best way to win friends and influence people.
Okay, difficult to imagine you as a robot.
Put 10 cream eggs in front of me and I'll promise you I'll show you what I'm a robot about.
Okay. Yeah, well, at Lead 50/50, our vision is 50/50 in leadership across the board on all levels of representation. And yeah, it is about men and women, that's true. But we are for equality. And as I said, it's when you have 50/50 in leadership, that's a workplace that's going to work for everyone, because the leadership paradigm is an inclusive one and diverse one. Yeah,
I completely agree. I gravitated towards you initially because of your goal for 50/50. When I was discussing with the bank's senior leadership team the suggestions that Project Speak Up had, one of them was to revise the gender balance goal from 30% to 50%. And the answer was that that's a long-term goal, but that's still several decades away, and you're pushing too hard. And I said, why? There is no shortage of talented, inspiring women that surrounded me at HSBC, totally capable of being inspirations and leaders for us all, just as men are capable of being caregivers and nurturers just as well as anyone. So I think we undervalue the potential of women as well as the potential of men to fit into those roles by our current expectation that only maybe 30% of women have what it takes to get there. We just need to look for that talent. It is right in front of our eyes. And a 30% number is interesting because it's the number of white women in our population. So the cynic in me also says that there's an ethnicity and an intersectionality play here, because I see very few Black women being elevated. So I just wanted to call out the subsets of women that have even more disadvantage than women as a whole. I think until men elevate women and also elevate women that are still women, you shouldn't have to lose touch of your femininity to be a leader. Those women that are assimilated lose the ability to bring other women with them. because they have started to think like a man, and they also lose the benefits that come with that diversity.
You mean, okay, women who tap into that very masculine paradigm of leadership, this being tough and shooting straight from the hip and all of that?
All that,
Oh, please
yeah,
no.
whatever that means. It's a shame. It's a shame that you
Yes.
have to. This comes back to my point earlier about authenticity. Is that if you think you need to be a man to fit in, you aren't being authentic. Unless that is your nature. But most women will bring something different to the table than men, and that's their value in a boardroom.
We just got a question from Nadine. Hi,
Hi,
Nadine.
Nadine. Thank you
What
for
will
joining.
sorry, what will it take for the male leadership framework to change and for softer, smiling leaders to be trusted as leaders? That's
We
quite
love
a
that.
question.
Smiling leaders. I have always, if anyone ever asks me what's your biggest attraction to someone, I always say smile. Smile is the biggest thing that attracts me, whether it's in a romantic a relationship or whether it's just a colleague or a friend. Or a smile says 1,000 words, and I think this plays into we just need to be nicer to each other. What would it take for a softer smile to make it into the boardroom? I think if behind that soft smile comes real authority and conviction through influence and knowledge of what you're talking about, which is hopefully what me and Maria are going for here, then there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to make it as much as someone who seeks power through control or division, or nepotism. I do really value the former, certainly as a founder and a CEO myself. When I'm looking for staff, I want people that have influence and authority through authenticity, rather than people that can get me to do what they want because they have control. I think it's very important that we be nice to each other, and I will certainly reward applicants that are that way.
Yeah. Could you tell us a bit about what you're doing with Daylight Consulting? I love the
Deilight.
name, by the way, Daylight.
Well, so it was Martin Luther King, who's one of my biggest inspirations and role models, who said that we cannot fight darkness with darkness. Only light can do that. And that was why I named Deilight Consulting, because we shine a light on the darkness and we fight hatred with love. I know it sounds corny, but that, for
No,
me, that is how I operate. It means that we say things that others don't want to hear. We tell the truth that others don't want to speak. So my firm really is about meaningful change. We don't just advise companies on how to look and sound great. We actually
Mhm.
advise companies on how to be great. We want to become better together. So we offer research, assessment advisory, crisis management, public speakers, and training, all within a sort of a diversity and inclusion lens. And the idea being that not all companies have the expertise to do this properly, but we do. We're full of black people, white people, gay people, straight people, people from all different backgrounds, different genders, and different specialisms. We have skills in statisticians, we have psychologists, we have therapists, we have sociologists, we have
Like yourself,
psychologists.
you are a
Very strange.
psychologist, right?
Well, that's why I see a broader range of issues, I think, because I have all these different skills and it's very rare you find a banker. I think I was the first ever banker with a psychology degree that they let on the grad scheme. They're probably rejecting that now. Probably regretting that now. But it gave me the ability to write this report, because how many
Yeah.
psychologists were able to digest all of that groupthink and all into a report?
We
Very
just
few.
we just got another good question. I agree. Do you think others, white males, can recognize authority when it looks different? Will you be
Uh,
taken seriously if you are all smiley and soft
I'll
and
tell
not
you what,
white?
I mentioned I got a lot of messages after Project Speak Up, hundreds of messages. I would say half of those messages were white men, and I was so touched by how much they realized their privilege and they wanted to help. And I think it's incredible that advocacy that you get from them. There is there is to some extent a generational gap. I found that the younger white men were more likely to send messages than older ones,
Mhm.
because they obviously have a desire to protect their privilege. And also there is more of a future ahead for younger white males than there is for older white males. So perhaps they're thinking a bit more long term. So I do think that we have we have to win over the hearts and minds of everyone, and that's why I'm here, not for myself or specifically just for women, but I really want to see everyone in the world be treated equally and fairly, not because of their skin color, or what's between their legs, or what method they use to get around. I want
Yeah.
it to just be free and fair for everyone.
Yeah, you're coming from a place of love, right? You
And that shouldn't be such a hard story to sell. Let's just do it.
Yeah, and I love it. So right.
I love it too. We've got an absence of adequate challenge on this call. We need someone that doesn't love it so they can keep us in check.
And
Groupthink.
would you like to tell us a bit more about Project Speak Up?
I mean, what can I say? 21 hours a day.
Where can we find it?
So it's on our website, daylightconsulting.com/project speak up.
We'll put it
The
in the
microsite is, thank you. We're a relatively new company, so not everyone knows it's there, but there you can download the fact sheet. It's just a one-pager on what happened and what the outcomes were. There's my interview with Reuters, which funny, I went into Reuters having this appointment, and I said to them, I've never seen a Reuters newspaper. Who's going to see this interview? And they said, about 1 billion people. So I thought, oh gosh, well, a good thing I got my new suit on. That was my interview, and I felt the weight really of that interview of having to represent a lot of people who didn't have a voice. But I was proud of my performance in contextualizing the report and why it was necessary and why I resigned. And that interview is also viewable on our website, and you can download a copy of the project report. I don't know if we can share a screen or two of it here.
Let's
But
try. We can try.
should we try?
Yeah,
So if I try this, if I can show you, I don't know if you can see this.
Now, is it working? Yeah, it is working. Perfect.
Yeah. So this you can see. You can see, in the report, I tried to get as much data in it as possible. So I analysed, the countries that we were in as a bank. Here showing, the number of African and Caribbean countries we were in being very low, and asked the questions that people wanted to know. Could institutional racism be a product of our global footprint, or could our global footprint be a product of institutional racism? You can see the map there with that absence of any colour in Africa. If this is indeed both the cause and effect of institutional racism, do we have a cyclic system that will continue in perpetuity? I also looked at the makeup of the board, and to my surprise, 9 white board members, the only banking board in the world run by one supreme race. 3 white women there, yes, great, but if you look at the demographics and the breakdown of the US population, this is the US board, you actually see that the women are greatly underrepresented. And in fact, women of color not represented at all. Indeed, no other race was represented. 40% of the US population are not represented in this board. That also is responsible for the bank's strategy in Latin America, a non-native English speaking region of the world. And these 9 white people are there in charge of the bank strategy there, a strategy that has not done too well for 4 years. And I also compared to other banks. So how are the other banks doing? And you can see female directors, there's 50-50, the white bar representing where I think it should be. 50.8% is the makeup of women in society. And you can see here of all these banks, where those banks lie, between 20 and 40% was the overall performance. Ethnic representation on the left there, and total representation of the US population is the third bracket. So HSBC being the red one was the least representative of any board of any major bank in the world. So the report, phenomenally empowering, talks through the systems of oppression, the different roles that are involved in punishing people and ejecting them from the business, and how that ultimately feeds into inequity, these cycles of inequity that I called them ego to discrimination cycles, because we often say the word ego. What we really mean is prejudice discriminators. Ego is Latin for I, meaning I am better than you. It is effectively discrimination. What we really want, the end of this path, is ultimately mutually assured self-destruction. Whereas what we really want is a world where everyone is free to be themselves, with an opportunity to meet their potential and respect, even if they cannot meet their full potential. That's what I think is a much nicer message to sell than this constant message and cycle of I'm better than you.
Yeah. There's a lot of fear going on there. Don't you think so? Fear of difference, fear people who are not like you. And
People are worried they're going to lose their privilege. Let's be real. That's what people are worried
this,
about.
yes,
I'm worried. You're worried. Everyone's worried. If we let all these black people in, then we are going to have to compete far harder for jobs, not to mention disabled people and LGBT. But here's the kicker. Years and years ago, during the women's suffrage movement, the argument against allowing women to have the vote was that if you allow women into parliament, they will feminize the decision-making process of this country and they will make men more feminine as a result. And that didn't happen. There was plenty of privilege to go around. And actually, women who were allowed into the House of Parliament, lawmakers as they are, have had a phenomenally positive impact on the laws and governance of our country. And the same thing will happen if we let black people in, if we let gay people in. There is plenty of privilege to go around. We are our own worst enemies by not doing it.
yeah. And well, we have to say there's a lot of goodwill out there. Those CEOs, the leadership, they do want to do the right thing. They want to be good, right? So sometimes they just don't know how.
I
They
would say they are as uncomfortable as the rest of us on the burden that has been put on them to put right a situation that they do not understand. And I feel really, without sympathizing with them, I do really feel the burden of responsibility on their shoulders. But they are not alone in this fight. We are here. People like you and Lead 50/50 and my firm, Deilight Consulting, we are here
Deilight.
as resources available to help you through that journey. There is no need to do this journey alone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you, Miriam. Keep up the good fight. I love what you're
me
doing.
too. Bye.
Bye now.
Bye, Jan. Thank you.